Don't accept rejection. That's always been my motto. It's a good motto for a beauty contestant, don't you think? You can overcome anything if you don't believe in rejection. I've been getting judged since I was 8 years old, and I entered my first pageant. I learned how to smile, to walk, and to answer all the questions right. I won just about every pageant I entered, and the ones I didn't win. If you think about it long enough, you can figure out a reason for every one of life's so-called rejections, and then it makes you feel better, and you can go on to yet another victory. As an example, take my marriage. I married Todd when I was 21 and still in college paid for with my pageant scholarships. He worshipped me, and he told me I looked like a goddess in my wedding gown. He just adored me, and we were very happy for a year or so. Then, things changed. Todd didn't seem as affectionate, and he found fault with me sometimes. Just little things, like that I never did any work around the house, and that I was too preoccupied with my appearance. It takes work to look like this, I always told him. Well, I thought he'd come around eventually. Men have always loved me, so why wouldn't he? There was another part though. He was seeing someone. I found love letters from her, little gifts she'd given him, the scent of her perfume on his clothing. I didn't handle it well, I admit. I got very angry at Todd. He denied it, but I could see in his eyes that he was lying. Looking back, I acted foolishly. I took an overdose of sleeping pills. I know, it was a silly thing to do. I just wasn't thinking right though. Long story short, I slept for a long time. And then I woke up, and I had the answer. Todd wasn't rejecting me, Sally Withersfield. He was rejecting Sally Withersfield, beauty queen. He was intimidated by my beauty, charm, and poise. The poor boy, he simply didn't see the real me. He didn't know the girl underneath the beauty queen, the girl beneath the skin. Well, I'm not one to lie around when I've figured something out. First thing I wanted to do was go see Todd and tell him, make him see that I was not this intimidating beauty queen. I was just a normal flesh and blood girl. It was night time and nothing looked familiar because I was still in a fog from all the sleeping pills, but I started off to find Todd. I was moving slowly and I walked and walked for what seemed like hours, but finally I found myself on our street and I made my way to our house at the end of a cobblestone drive next to the old church and the cemetery. I decided to surprise Todd, so I let myself in quietly and climbed the stairs. Wouldn't he be surprised when he saw me? I couldn't wait to see the look on his face. I got to the bedroom and decided not to knock, to make the surprise better. When I opened the door and turned on the light, I had the shock of my life. There was my Todd in bed with another woman, and not an attractive one, either. She was nothing compared to me. Short, dumpy, and with wide-set eyes and a mouth that was opened in a scream. Well, of course the two of them were screaming. Who wouldn't be when they're caught in that position? Something in Todd's eyes looked odd though. He was looking at me with horror. I wanted to reassure him that I had it all figured out. I wanted to explain everything, because I knew that as soon as I forgave him, he'd understand and want me back. I wanted to tell him that everything was going to be all right. I walked over to the bed, and they both scrambled to get away from me. I reached out to Todd, but he swatted my hand away. And that's when the strangest thing happened. My hand, with my whole arm attached, fell on the floor. I stood there looking at it for a long time. It was brownish grey, with little white worms in it. Pretty as could be. Then I picked it up with my other hand and reattached it. You have to make the best of things, I always say. Be positive. Don't accept rejection. Todd will see that in time. He's still talking to himself in the corner, but he'll come around eventually. The girl, well, she passed away, I'm afraid. I guess some people have weaker hearts than others. The main thing is, now Todd has seen the real me. And the beauty part is, it's been a real eye-opener for him. He couldn't get the thought out of his head. It was stuck there, like a song playing on repeat. This one thought consumed him. It wasn't supposed to be this way. He was engaged to be married and hadn't looked at another woman in so long. His fiancée was out of town. What was her name again? No matter, it was Maya he wanted to think about. He'd gone to the party with some friends. From the moment he walked in the door and saw Maya, the auburn hair, the green eyes, the way she laughed at everything, he felt something change. She told him she liked guys who took chances. You look like somebody who takes chances, she said. He smiled at that because it was so wrong. He was not a risk taker. He was an actuary, and he spent his days calculating risks for an insurance company. In his personal life, he liked sure things. He had his life all planned out, even to how many children he'd have, and where he'd spend his retirement 30 years from now. It was satisfying to plan that way. "I never plan," she said. "Too boring. I want every moment to be different." They talked for hours, and everything around them fell away. He was not aware of anyone else, of other conversations, of the time passing. Before long, they were walking outside, where he kissed her under a willow tree in the moonlight. He knew he'd had too much to drink, but he couldn't resist. Just this once, he thought. Just this once, I'll be crazy, wild, throw caution to the wind. Her kisses were electric, unlike anything he'd ever experienced. He felt himself letting go. "I have a great idea," she said. "Let's go swimming in the quarry." "I don't like to swim. I can't float." "Oh, come on, don't be a spoilsport. It's great fun." Then they were driving along a deserted road in his sensible car, with the windows down and her hair streaming in the wind, and she was urging him to go faster. "Come on," she said. "Push it. Isn't it fun? We're all alone. Let's have some fun. Go faster." He'd had too much to drink. One minute he was laughing and singing with her at the top of his lungs, feeling full of life, and the next he saw the tree, the big oak tree, at a fork in the road, and he knew he couldn't stop in time. It was all a picture, the most vivid picture he'd ever seen, just so clear. The tree, the car, the moonlight, clear and sharp. He couldn't get it out of his head. Maybe that's why he went back to it every night, back to the twisted wreckage, the motor racing even though the car was wrecked, her screaming, scrambling out of the car through the passenger window, blood and makeup and tears streaking her face, and his broken, bloody, mangled body lying there. It was the other now. Dead, gone, all the plans turned to ashes. The picture was stuck in his head, and it kept repeating over and over. Forever. "Watch out for the thing in the basement," Billy's Uncle Hank used to say. He thought it was funny, and he'd smile when he told Billy about it. "Been down there a long time, since before I bought this house," he'd say. "People told me about it, told me not to buy the house, but I didn't listen. I know it's there, though I can feel its presence. Like a cold, clammy feeling. It makes your skin crawl. You know something's watching you, just waiting to pounce." Billy didn't like his uncle. He was strange, had too many rules, and every rule had a punishment. The worst punishment was the basement. If you ever did something really bad, Uncle said, you would have to go downstairs where the thing lived. The basement was called a Michigan basement. It was unfinished, with a bare earth floor and walls. There was a workbench, with tools scattered all around, and clutter everywhere. Old, broken furniture, ancient toys, old magazines mouldering in stacks, a bare light bulb in the ceiling. It smelled damp and musty, and there were strange noises that came from the shadows. His uncle came down here to do his woodworking, and he had an assortment of saws, lathes, and chisels. There was even a big industrial table saw that could cut thick planks of wood. When Billy's mother told him she was going away on vacation with his father, and that he'd have to stay with his uncle for a week, he pleaded not to go. "Now, Billy," his mother said, "you're being unreasonable. We can't afford to hire a babysitter for you for the week, and we have no other close relatives living nearby. We're not really friendly with any of our neighbors, you know. I don't believe in getting chummy with neighbors, so Uncle Hank is the only option we have. I don't know why you keep saying you don't like your Uncle Hank. Why, he's my brother, we're so close. We could almost be twins." The first day, Billy broke a rule. His uncle had a strict rule about not wasting anything, and Billy accidentally tipped a liter bottle of soda over on the kitchen table, and all the soda poured out. His uncle got red in the face, smiled, and said, "Well, Billy, I think for that infraction you need to spend some time in the basement." Billy begged him not to go, but his uncle didn't listen. He grabbed Billy by the collar and marched him down the old wooden steps, then marched back up himself, closed the big wooden door and bolted it shut, and then he turned out the light. It was a good thing the house was set back from the road, and there were no neighbors close by, or they would have heard Billy's screams. Billy's uncle seemed not to notice the screams, or the pounding on the door, or any of the other noises that came from the basement. The next morning he came down to breakfast whistling a cheery tune. When he was finished eating his cereal, he said, "Well, Billy, I think you've had enough punishment for one night. Let's see how you're doing." When Billy's mother got back from her trip and came to pick him up, she rang the doorbell over and over, but nobody answered. She tried the front door handle and found that the door was unlocked. She made her way through the house calling, "Billy, Hank, where are you?" In the kitchen, she saw a cereal box on the sideboard and a bowl and spoon in the sink. The door to the basement was open. She went downstairs slowly, calling, "Billy, Hank, are you there?" It was dark in the basement, and it took several moments before her eyes adjusted. There was something at the far end of the room, by the table saw. The thing in the basement moved toward her. "Mama," it said.